No, but it was very sweet.
I bought it too, but I say,
I'm worried about the snacks. Yeah, they really bought things up. They get their management, but the same ownership. I mean, they're big real estate guys. But it's kind of money in the real estate. They own Tyson one or two. One of them works out in my gym.
no, I don't expect anything else. He was such a
Yeah, congratulations. What's your business?
I know that. I know his first name.
It's a cute name. When she speaks it, right? You're not reading out. These are not in the okay. Yeah, but I think you're not in this.
Folks, we're going to get started in a few minutes, so just want to remind everyone that there are yarmulkes, kippot available, and if you have a cell phone, we're not starting now, but soon. If you haven't silenced your cell phone, you can start to do that, and we'll begin in a few minutes. going to begin, I want to once again invite you, if you haven't yet silenced your cell phone or turned it off, to please do so. We're going to begin our service of loving tribute and memory to Stephen Kessler with ancient words of consolation. This is taken from the Psalms, Psalm 23. I'll offer it first in the Hebrew, and then I'll share the English translation. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot esher yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenaleni. Nafshi eshovev, nafshi eshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, leman shemo, gam ki elech, Begates al mavet, o irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha, o mishantecha. Shiftecha umishantecha, Hema yenachamoni, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, neged sorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov achesed, yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, Vishavti beveit Adonai, Vishavti beveit Adonai, leorech yamim. Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As we all say, Amen. Stephen Albert Kessler, Stevie, Pops, Shlomo ben Moshe, the heir of Bella, came to this Ida and Harry Sofer sanctuary every single Shabbat morning, and sometimes Friday nights as well. Some might say that he came here because this sacred space was dedicated by his mishpacha, his extended family from Pittsburgh. I can only imagine how his personal connection to and history with this room made his prayers that much more meaningful and special. But Steve came here simply because it was Shabbos, a time to be with his fellow Jews in celebration of our people's weekly holy day of rest. He rarely missed a week. And if Steve wasn't in shul, it's because he was ill or he was out of town. Steve was always Jewish, but in the last couple of decades, he rediscovered his passion and rededicated himself to Jewish ritual, to our Jewish community, to the state of Israel. He came for the Ruach, for the Spirit. He came for the prayers, both the ones he loved hearing chanted by our cantors and the ones he offered to God himself. He came for the sermons. He came for the shmooze. He came for the community he helped to build, the friendships he forged, and the sense of belonging and purpose he gained by being here. Steve would always sit in his regular seat, right over there, with his usual posse. Now, back in the days, Uncle Eugene would be sitting with him. Eugene was part of the inspiration that got him to come to shul in the first place, and he was like a father figure to Steve, a man whose footsteps in the field of construction, general contracting, and project management that Steve closely followed and admired throughout his life. Or maybe he would sit beside his aunts, Bea or Frances, or his cousin Rita. Whoever he was sitting with, Steve treated them as if they were family. But in truth, Steve was completely devoted to his actual family. And nothing was more important to him than that. Perhaps that's why he passed away on the day that he did, 4 months to the day after his beloved sister Rosalie passed. This past Sunday, the family gathered to celebrate Rosalie's life. And Steve was surrounded by so many of his family members as they shared stories and memories together. In fact, Steve had written a speech about Rosalie that he was prepared to deliver. But because he was so verklempt and so emotional, as he tended to get later on in his years, he kept the 4 handwritten note cards in his pocket. His children, Leah and Brandon, sent me the note cards yesterday of the speech that he had prepared to deliver on the day he died. He wrote, and I quote, these are Steve's words: "I am so grateful that Rosalie has been in my life. She was such a special sister to me. The love we shared is something I will hold in my heart forever. Rosalie has always been there for me during good times and not so good times. She was someone I could count on, always with a strong, steady voice. I was so lucky to have had her. She was a role model for me. I have many beautiful memories of growing up together, our family Sunday dinners, all caps, family picnics, but the one memory Rosalie and I would always get a good laugh about was her well-intentioned effort to please Daddy by working at Dad's supermarket, and in parentheses, tell the brief story that happened. I don't know the brief story, so maybe someone will tell it. Rosalie's life touched so many, but to me, she was simply my sister. She knew my history, shared my childhood, and stood by me. I will always carry Rosalie's memory in my heart forever." There's no doubt that Steve's sudden passing on Sunday was a shock to all of us who loved him, to all those who knew him. While he and his knees gave him tsuris, and he struggled to walk as sprightly as he used to, his death was as unexpected as it was untimely. But there is some measure of comfort in surmising that were Steve to have crafted his last day of life, it would have been this past Sunday. He was in great spirits, laughing and loving and living as he always did, surrounded by his living loved ones while he cherished the memory of his late loved ones. And he got to watch the Steelers beat the Ravens. This was the way Steve Kessler lived his life, and this was how Steve Kessler enjoyed his last day. He was born on February 2nd, 1945, and every time I called him on his birthday, we would say something about Groundhog's Day. In the city of Pittsburgh, to Bernard and Bella Kessler, he was the second born of 4 children, a brother to his older sister, the late Rosalie, and to his younger siblings, the late Jane and Richie, who's here with us. The family was always close. And as Steve himself wrote in his note cards, Sunday dinners were a fixture in his childhood. As Richie described them, it didn't matter what kind of food was served. Family was always on the menu, and everyone was always together. He graduated in 1963 from Taylor Alderdice High School in Pittsburgh, one of the many special connections I shared with him because I went there too. We used to tell people in the synagogue that we both went to the same high school, just not at the same time. He was a very accomplished athlete and excelled in all sports. He lettered in football, baseball, basketball, and track, and later he became an accomplished tennis player and golfer. And when his younger brother Richie started high school 7 years later, the coaches were somewhat disappointed to learn that Richie wasn't exactly the star athlete his older brother was. After high school, Steve studied communication at Penn State University. He was a warm, approachable, handsome athlete who could dance like James Brown. So, yes, he was popular with the ladies. I think it runs in the family here. But when he graduated, many of his peers were being drafted into the Vietnam War, and so he chose to volunteer for the Peace Corps, which he did. And after he finished the Peace Corps, they drafted him to Vietnam anyway. He served 2 years in the U.S. Army, including a year in Vietnam, where he worked there in communications. Despite not having served in combat, he was affected by the intense environment of Vietnam. He didn't talk about it often, but his family believes it's the reason why he always napped with one eye open. If you startled him from a nap, you had better duck, because he woke up swinging. After Vietnam, Steve worked with his family in Pittsburgh, the late Harry Sofer and the late Donnie Sofer, later on with Jeff and Jackie and others at Turnberry Associates and Fontainebleau Development. In the beginning, he did whatever was needed. He started out as a gopher for Harry. As a young man, he literally dug ditches for the new Monroeville Mall outside of Pittsburgh, and he would come home at the end of those days, filthy, exhausted, but happy. Little by little, Steve learned about and grew into the business of construction, general contracting, and project management. He learned so much from Eugene, from Harry, from Donnie. He got his contractor license in multiple states so he could work on projects in Tennessee and Las Vegas, and of course, here in South Florida. Over time, he had a hand in creating hotels, high-rises, major projects that stood tall just like he did. He was reliable, he was honorable, he was hardworking, and he earned people's respect in the old-fashioned way, by always doing things the right way and by being a mensch. He moved to South Florida in the early 1970s, where he raised his children, Leah and Brandon, in Davie. Steve was more of a doer than a talker, and his children learned what was important to him by watching their strong, silent-type father, whom they knew loved them very, very much. He coached Brandon's basketball team. He tried to teach Leah tennis. His children saw his passion for life and his passion for work. They saw his work ethic, which was second to none. He was like a machine. They saw his keen attention to detail. They knew that a job is never done until you stay until the end and finish it. They learned that falling down doesn't matter. What matters is how confidently and how quickly you get back up on the horse. And they learned that shoes never leave the house unpolished, and that a car not washed once a week is not a car worth driving. He was a devoted brother-in-law to Karen and Steve, a loving father-in-law to Scott and to Ella, a cherished grandfather to Jacob, Vivian, Isabella, Corinne, Liza, Maxine, a beloved uncle to Joshua and Jesse, their sons, Kainua and Kilianoa, and Jordan and Beth, and their daughter Sophie. They all brought him so much joy, and he always wanted to be around them. He never missed a birthday, a celebration, a milestone moment. He would write beautiful cards with heartfelt messages, perhaps from the skills he honed studying communications in college. He was so thoughtful and so sweet with his words that he would say or that he would write. He clearly hit a new, emotionally vulnerable and expressive gear later in life. As a younger man, he may have walked the walk of a tough guy with a hard hat, a grunt physical laborer and builder. But as an older man, it wasn't that Steve became soft on the outside. He remained imposingly strong throughout his life, but he did seem a bit softer on the inside. Starting to wear his emotions on his sleeve, it didn't take much to bring sentimental tears to his eyes. I feel so blessed, personally, to have known Steve for the last 19 years. At first, I knew him as Uncle Eugene's right hand on our synagogue's board of directors. After Eugene concluded his tenure as vice president of facilities, Steve stepped right into that very same role and served our congregation as the next vice president of facilities. No one changed a light bulb on this campus without first talking to Steve and getting his approval, just as we did with Eugene before him. He cared so much about this place, and he helped us immeasurably and on so many occasions, particularly when we refreshed this Harry and Ida Sofer Sanctuary 10 years ago. But it was 9 years ago, this December, this month, that I traveled to Israel on a Hanukkah winter break family mission with bar bat mitzvah age kids and their parents and their grandparents. And we advertised this mission to the congregation, and Steve approached me and said, "Rabbi, I hear you're going to Israel. I want to go." I said, "Steve, this is a mission for families, kids and parents and grandparents." He says, "I don't care. I was just in Israel with my brother-in-law, Steve. I'm dying to go back." He was the only single person on our bus. And he was adopted, so to speak, by all of the families as one of their own. When we would have dinner on our own, it was a fight. Who would Steve go with? He would go with this family, this family. They all wanted him with it. He was our mascot. Always in good spirits, always in his khaki fisherman's vest with 100 pockets. He did everything everyone else did, including planting a tree with me in a forest, splunking down 2,000-year-old caves from the time of the Maccabees, and touring Masada in his Pittsburgh Steelers hat. I was privileged to be with him in Jerusalem when he purchased the talit, the prayer shawl, that he wore every Shabbat since that mission. He cried when he bought it, of course. And whenever he would remember our time in Israel together, he would get emotional all over again. I'll forever cherish the times we shared together, especially on Shabbat. When I would process around the synagogue with the Torah and shake his hand, we always exchanged something about the Steelers, either celebrating a great win or lamenting a disappointing loss, which was more frequent of late. He believed I was the best father in the world for the simple reason that I raised my kids in South Florida to be Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And sometimes on Shabbat, Steve would wear this khaki, cashmere, or camel hair, I don't know what it was made of, but a blazer that strikingly resembled the ones worn by NFL players who are inducted into the Hall of Fame. You might remember this blazer. And I would tease him about being in the Hall of Fame, and he would smile from ear to ear. Today, I'd like to believe that Steve Kessler has finally entered the Hall of Fame, a collection of souls who will be cherished and remembered forever. We might imagine his sister Rosalie needing her baby brother beside her after 4 months. We might imagine Donnie, after 5 months, needing to build something in heaven, needing his general contractor project manager beside him. But what we can't imagine is anyone here or anyone who knew him to ever forget Steve Kessler. For the man, for the father, the grandfather, the uncle, the cousin that he was, for the friend he became to so many, and to the soft, loving, and sweet soul he carried throughout his entire life. May the memory of Steve Kessler, Shlomo ben Moshe Be'er of Bella, forever be a blessing. May he rest in peace with all his loved ones who await him in the Hall of Fame. Tihi nishmato tzror b'tzror ha'chaim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life, as we all say, amen. Going to hear from 3 or maybe more members of his family, beginning with his brother Richie, his brother-in-law Steve, and his daughter Leah. And there may be additional speakers as well. Richie.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Kessler, but you can call me Richie. Everybody else does. Can you hear me okay? Back there? Not at all? How about now? That better? Excellent. This is the day that I knew was coming, and I never wanted it to arrive. I'm Steve's younger brother, the youngest of 4 children, and now the last one from our original family of 6. You learn a lot about a person when you share a bedroom with them for 10 plus years. That room was our whole universe. 2 Pittsburgh boys whispering after lights out about the X's and O's of Steeler football. Why the Pirates were still so ho-hum, yet somehow we still believed. The latest Motown records, cars, girls and cars. And I confess, the occasional stolen Marlboro. All those years of late night Motown didn't go to waste. Steve was an excellent dancer. I mean, really great. He picked up the moves of the greats, a little James Brown, the fancy footwork of the Temptations, even a touch of Jackie Wilson's flair. When the music hit, Stevie could cut a rug. Those same years found us working side by side in my father's supermarket, learning lessons that we didn't fully recognize until later. Who knew that those long, hard days would be so valuable? As the rabbi said, Steve was a natural athlete, much to my chagrin. It was a tough act to follow. I could play baseball, he could play everything. He was the guy who could pick up any sport and become a master of it so fast. Whether it was something he played growing up or knew when he tried later in life, he just had an instinctive way of moving, like a natural, flexible athlete. And like any true Pittsburgher, he could talk sports with insight, humor, and strong opinions, especially when it came to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then there were the Sunday dinners on Wendover Street. The ritual never changed. Steak, green beans, and a baked potato. Week after week, year after year. But you know what? We never complained. Because it wasn't about what was on the plate. It was about the six of us around that table. That rhythm, that closeness, it shaped our family. Life, of course, has a way of pulling people in different directions. There were years when Steve became fully consumed by work, when the job and the grind took up so much oxygen that the balance shifted. Many of us have been there. But underneath it all, Steve's core never changed. He cared about family, even when it was hard to show it in the way that he wished he could. And nothing made that clearer than Steve's pride in his children and grandchildren. Stevie may not have said it out loud all the time, but he cared for them so much, their milestones. He followed you so closely, and he was quick to share it with anyone who wanted to listen. As Steve grew older, he found his quiet rhythm again. He became more thoughtful, more steady in his ways, more careful in his decisions. Steve approached his renewed interest in Judaism with curiosity and humility. Not loudly, not for show. He didn't have a stack of books on his nightstand, although there were a few next to his Barca lounger. He did it because it meant something to him very deeply. His passion for Israel was genuine. It came up often in our phone calls. His thoughts about the latest news, the rabbi's most recent sermon, the weekly Torah portion. Steve soaked it all up like a sponge. And when Shabbat services were over, Steve loved nothing more than surrounding himself with his beloved Uncle Eugene, his Aunt Frances, and Aunt Beatty. Occasionally, Cousin Rita would show up, and his dear friend, Wendy, and they would have brunch at the Bagel Cove. Those mornings meant the world to him, a circle of companionship, comfort, and routine. He truly cherished those moments. Over the years, connecting with my brother was effortless. Even when life took us in different directions, we could pick up a conversation as if we hit the pause button the night before. Brothers can do that. Steve and I could do that. As I think about that old Wendover Street dinner table now, I feel the weight of who is gone and the gratitude for having had them in my life. I miss every one of them. those moments, those voices, those simple dinners, they feel even more precious today. Steve's passing is sudden and it hurts. His life mattered in quiet, durable ways, as construction is by nature, and that will stay with people for a very long time. So Stevie, thank you for being my brother, for the lessons we learned together, the talks that shaped us, the memories that stay with me now. Thank you for the parts of yourself that you gave so freely into so many in ways that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And may Stephen Kessler's memory be a blessing.
Hello, my name is Steve Katsky, and Steve was my brother-in-law, but he was really like a brother. We both loved the same woman, my wife, his sister, but in different ways, Rabbi. In fact, I'm wearing Stevie's shoes now. They're size 11, but they're triple E, so they're tough shoes to fill. But I'm going to try, Brandon. I'll be honest with you. Stevie sometimes had the reputation of being, how shall we say, conservative with the dollar, which made him the perfect guy to work for on so many big SOFR projects because he wouldn't spend their money either. But that's not true. That was fake news, as Stevie would say. It's fake news. Not true about Stevie. There was no amount of money, no amount too great that he wouldn't spend on a card. On every occasion, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, Rose and I would get a great card from Stevie, and boy, could he write. He wrote beautiful thoughts of love that he had for all of us, and I think we all share that. They were great, and we always thank Stevie, because to get a card from Stevie was to get a gift more meaningful than anything from Bloomingdale's, or so he said. People have talked about Stevie's connection to the temple, and I want to reiterate that. Often, or almost every Saturday, Rosalie and I would get a telephone call from Stevie on the way to the Bagel Cove, and he would say how meaningful the sermons were that both of you gave, and how he carried it with him. So I got my Jewish education through Stevie. He seldom missed going to Shabbat services. And then, as was said, he joined the board, and he was instrumental in renovating the sanctuary along with his favorite uncle, Uncle Eugene. Couldn't have done it without you, Eugene. Stevie and I went to Israel together a few years back. He had never been there, and I had been there a couple times, so it was a pleasure to see Israel through his eyes. I remember when I picked him up at the airport, he was wearing a blue blazer, tan pants, and a big white Panama hat. More Palm Beach than Jerusalem. But the guide never stopped talking about him the entire 2 weeks. It was a great experience for both of us. You know, the rabbi mentioned a story that he was going to tell at Rosalie's memorial service just a few days ago. And it was about Rosalie, and it was about his Rosalie's dad. So I'm going to interject a little story. I'm going to make it brief about Stevie and Stevie's dad. Stevie was, when he was really young, before Richie was around, he was quite the athlete, and he played around. And one day he actually fell into a sewer up in Pittsburgh, and they couldn't get him out. So they called the fire department. They finally got him out. Rosalie was there. Stevie's mother, Bella, was there. They were up in arms. They didn't know what to do, so they finally called Stevie's father, Bernie. Bernie was so mad that he took the phone, which was on the wall, and he actually ripped it off the wall and threw it to the floor. After that, Stevie was much more prudent. But I can't talk about Stevie without talking about his relationship with his sister, Rosalie. This is going to be hard. Rosalie, only 18 months older, was always the one he turned to for guidance and comfort. That emotional attachment between them was a source of strength and solace for both of them. When Rosalie was so sick this summer and was bedridden, Stevie, although not in good health himself, said that he was coming up to Maryland to be with his sister. No matter what, he would be there. And he came ready to spend a week there, but he stayed for 3 weeks. He stayed for the end, holding Rosalie's hand the entire time. The loyalty, the companionship, the love were so greatly appreciated by Rosalie and by me. Her loss was something he could not replace. You know the old saying, live each day as though it might be your last? Trite but true. His last day was spent with some of the people who meant the most to him. His daughter Leah, son-in-law Scott, his brother Richie, and his entire family, me, and with many of the tributes and many of the memories of his sister Rosalie. He died as he lived, with love in his heart. God bless you. We'll miss you.
Very much. Appreciate that. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Leah Kessler Denson, and I'm Stevie's daughter. I wasn't going to speak today. Many of you in this room have already lost your fathers, some very recently, and I'm so sorry for that. It has been a very hard half of 2025 for the Kesslers and Sophers. First Dawn, then Rosalie, now my dad. So we can stop now, and maybe we should get together for some happier reasons. But for those of you, this is mine and my brother's first time experiencing this kind of loss, and it is very overwhelming. I didn't come down this weekend for this. I had come down to celebrate the life of my Aunt Rosalie, and how fitting that we're being able to honor both her and my dad today, honestly. It's really kind of perfect. I want to say initially thank you so much to those of you who have reached out, those of you who have provided ridiculous amounts of pastrami and turkey and bagels and arugula. That's homemade. Cousin Rita, it's the best. And really just an overwhelming outreach of family. One of the things is, as we are, Rabbi, we are a complicated family, and I think that's pretty accurate. We're a family of leaders, and as leaders often do, they have very strong opinions, but I think today demonstrates how core that family is in each one of you. That when it comes down to it, regardless of differences, family shows up. And I am so grateful. My brother and I are both so grateful and honored to be a part of that. It means a lot. So this morning, I realized that if I did not speak, while my dad would certainly understand, like all of the Bernie Kessler kids, as you saw from Uncle Richie, and also I'm sure you heard my Aunt Rosalie, because she was a big talker too. They were all big fans of the aptly written and spoken word, most likely instilled in all of them by Grandma Bell, who was an avid reader and speaker. And speaking a word today on his behalf is one of the best things I could do to honor him. Growing up, my father was the strong and silent type. He gave instructions by showing my brother and I how to live, as opposed to, this is how we do things, this is why we do things, this is, it was never that. It was more just like, see it, now do it. He worked hard, he exercised hard, very, very committed to his health, really, whether it was his diet or working out or playing sports or just being active, really felt very passionately about that. But he did everything with excellence, which is a trait we are missing in society today. We're so rushed. And it was down to the most minute detail. It's one of the characteristics that made him so good at his job. And just like all things in life, it's the little things that matter. Like how he would make sure our shoes were polished, and I'd watch him with his leather brush and polish on the weekends, making sure my brother, mother, and I were ready to face the world. How his car was always immaculate. I think when each one of my kids started driving, the first thing to arrive was a car kit with tire shine and everything that you could to make sure that that car was taken care of. How he would maintain our landscaping at our home in Davie, every shrub. Like I had images of him walking around in his little short shorts, which was like so embarrassing as a kid, by the way. And because of course he was very into working out, and so that's what he did. And he just, would wear these muscle man t-shirts like Hulk Hogan, and they were always like hot pink. You guys are laughing because you've seen the outfit. And he would walk around our block and he would be carrying these big shears, and he would have just done that bush, but like it was immaculate. And our impatiens were the most gorgeous things you've ever seen in your entire life. They came up past your knees, like it was gorgeous, really beautiful. He could tell you any palm tree that you could see. Oh, that's a royal palm. This is a this palm. This is a this, like very, very adamant about it. He had an affinity for the number 2 pencil. My notes are written in number 2 pencil. He would always walk around with it tucked behind his ear. A lot of you remember him like that. I do, I definitely do. And when he retired from one job, somebody had made him a really cool caricature of himself, which was very accurate. He always had that, mustache, and he had that pencil behind his ear, and it's on that picture. And if you went into his office at work, he'd have cups and cups filled with number 2 pencils, all sharpened to a very sharp point. As a kid, I was obsessed with the pencils. Going to work with him was such an experience. I can remember he'd be like, yelling and screaming and doing all the things, but he had two different stages. There was the yelling and screaming where you were very, very afraid. And then there was I am very disappointed in you. So it was kind of like growing up with a mob boss, I would imagine. And that's how he got things done. And he did. He cared so much about getting everything done and to the T. He was a ridiculously amazing grandfather. I can stand here and look you dead straight in the face. The most amazing grandfather you have ever met in your entire life. The kind I didn't even know, like, that kind of relationship could be possible. It was the kind you hear about in the Hallmark movies. And as a parent, because when I was little, he was in work mode, you know? It was stressful. He was providing for a family. He was not very emotional. And so as a parent, to see your dad relate with your kids on that kind of level was so incredibly amazing for me, healing for me, and wonderful for them. And he cared so deeply for each one of them. And I'm so sad, you know, that Corinne and Eliza and Maxine are not going to get to, like, experience that. So we'll have to fill them in on how he would be. You could just feel the joy he had when he was around you guys. It was amazing, really, truly. And what a cool experience. Like, he even hosted Vivian and her two girlfriends on spring break and bought them a fifth of vodka, and they're not 21, okay? And it was just, he was the coolest grandpa ever. And even some of her friends were like, Pops, what do you mean Pops is gone? You know, he got a second chance, you know? He endured many trials in his life, and when he became involved here at Aventura Turnberry Jewish Center is when his heart began to grow and heal. And the community and love he experienced here was par to none. Rabbi Birkin, Rabbi Cohen, my dad loved both of you deeply. Not only would he tell Steve about your sermons, he would tell me, he would tell anybody who would listen. I'm sure he and Wendy talked about them a lot afterwards. And he had such tremendous respect for both of you. He took great pride in serving the synagogue and its members in any way he could. He loved this congregation. And in turn, you all brought so much joy to his life. Thank you for loving my dad. Really. To my dad, family was everything, everything, in all caps, everything. Whether it was the family picnics in Pittsburgh, I heard so much about. I would really love to experience that. I've seen some pictures. You know, it wasn't as glamorous as our get-togethers are now, but I think it was very, very heartfelt and authentic. Or the Saturday breakfasts at the Cove. Any time with family, as my Grandma Belle used to say, was the best day ever. That's what she used to say. And we're like, you just said the other day was the best day ever. How is this one the best day ever? She's like, it's the best day ever. And one of the hardest things about death is that, especially in this case, it comes unexpectedly. And sometimes we don't get a chance to tell the loved ones how precious they are to us. And while I think he knew how much we loved him, I want to make sure that you know how much you meant to him. Because again, he really was the strong and silent type, unless he was writing you a beautiful card, and it was incredible. Do you know I already found my Christmas cards in his drawer that he was ready to send me? He had already bought them. He spent ridiculous amounts of money at Hallmark. And that was the one thing he never skimped on, ever. It was better than Bloomingdale's. Aunt Francie and Aunt Beatty and Cousin Rita, my dad adored you all. He did. He really did. You made him laugh, smile with your stories and antics and unsolicited advice. And he loved going to breakfast with you all at the Cove. You were like second moms to him after Grandma Bell died. And he loved you. Uncle Eugene, there are not words to express what you meant to Dad and what you mean to us. And you too, Stuart. As a mentor, as a second dad, as a friend, when he needed you, you were there for him and for us. And he loved you both so deeply. He really did. Jeff, my dad, was so grateful for the opportunities you and Don and Harry had given him. It allowed him to create and build and be a part of something much bigger than himself. He worked tirelessly for you, but you know that. But what I wanted to say to you that maybe you don't know, because again, my dad verbally was not good. Written, he was amazing, is he was so proud of you. He was really proud of you and everything you accomplished. And I remember when we went for the opening of Fountain Blue in Las Vegas, and he just kept walking around and be like, Jeff did so good, you know? He did so good. And I remember him telling me a story, and I guess you were 20-something, and you were giving him a really hard time. and he was like, la, 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 and he would, get into his thing. And you said, you better be careful, you're going to be working for me one day. And he was. And he was just so honored to be a part of bringing your vision to life. So thank you for giving him that chance. He loved it. He loved it. He was so proud. He would drive us around the Strip, and he'd be like, and we did this here, and we did this here, and we did it, I can't remember all the things he said. I was like 20-something, and I didn't care. I could go through the rows, and I could mention each one of you. Steve, Richie, Karen, Jordan. You meant so much to him. And I think we can all agree that my dad was a special man. My brother and I are so grateful that you're here. He touched each one of us. He left quite a legacy in myself and my brother, Ella, Scott, Jacob, Vivian, Bella, Corinne, Maxine, and Eliza. And the top 3 core values that he instilled in us being, number 1, faith in God, 2, quest for excellence, and the 3, priority of family above all else. I just want to say to my dad, thank you for everything. And that you're going to miss him so much.
We're going to hear now from Jeff Sofer,
up here, Unc? I wasn't going to say anything, but when Leah came and said to me, you want to say anything? And I thought, you know what? I have to say something. So, oof, it's not been an easy year, as she said, but I have so many memories with Steve. But just starting out as a kid, he was always at our house, because when my father, came down here, Stevie came down here. So my dad was always about family. Uncle Eugene came with him. The whole family came. Well, I think you were in Pittsburgh for a little bit, but when we moved down here, he was always at our house. I remember in Miami Beach and playing tennis. Although my dad said he wasn't a great athlete, so just saying. As you know, my dad always would say the Kesslers are not good athletes. No offense, but he was very, Stevie was just such an unbelievable guy. There's a lot of people in this room, some that have worked with him, Willie, the guys that work with me in the back, and he always, you could count on Stevie. You could always count him to be there, you could trust him. I remember when I just went to Nashville, and I made the deal to build a hotel in Nashville, and I went up there and we signed everything. All right, Steve, you're going up to Nashville, and there he goes, and I went up there, and we would have some shouting matches. There was definitely, nothing was ever perfect. He always used to say, "Excuse me, I'm in a house of worship." He used to say, "God damn it." He would be like, every time he's frustrated and just look his mouth, his grin, and really just get frustrated. But he was in the gym at 5 in the morning. I remember when I lived in Turnberry, he would be in the gym at 5 in the morning. There comes Steve. He'd be at that trailer at 7 a.m. with Willie and the guys. And, when I started in the business with my dad, he said, "You're going to go to construction." So, I started working for Stevie. Of course, I never listened to anyone. I worked with Stevie and Willie and a couple of the guys there. And I remember we were building townhouses out at Turnberry, the townhouse at Turnberry. And at that time, I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do. And I didn't go to school, so I just, my dad's like, "You got to go to work." So, and I worked at the townhouses. You're right, Steve, with the pencils. The pencils in the ears. And, he had a whole ritual that he would do every day. And then, as I graduated and we did more stuff together, I was getting more involved in the business. And I remember Porta Vita, when I made the deal with Porta Vita, and we had a partner that was a good friend of mine, Hugo Colombo, that came in, and Stevie did the construction. And I remember we were designing, and I was just thinking about when we were talking about it, it's like we built these townhouses in Porta Vita, because my dad's like, you got to build it. Townhouses first, then the mid-rise, which was everything was backwards. Honestly, that was today, and we built these townhouses. I think Bruce is here somewhere. Hi, Bruce. And we sold these townhouses, and the person closed. They went to pull up to put their car in the garage, and the car didn't fit in the garage. I'm like, "Stevie, how the hell did that happen? What happened?" He was just up and going crazy. But he was always very proud of his children. I know he wasn't emotional towards you back in the day when he was there, was working. I remember when Brandon had an incident at school and he blew up the bathroom. And he was, Willie knows this, he was right there, but I could remember just see him screaming it, "I gotta go. He was just, but he loved his kids, and he was very proud of his grandson, Jacob. I remember him talking about you going to engineering school, and he was very proud of that. And, but I would say that Stevie was a guy you could count on, and when I went to Las Vegas, it's a very complex place to do business, because these buildings are big and they're massive and they're complicated, and the contractors out there were very, they in the casino business, went back when they started, they made so much money that the costs weren't really as important. They just needed to get them built as quickly as possible. So when we were selling condominiums at Turnberry Place, we had to build it. We sold you a condo for $1. We had to build it for X amount and make our profit, and we couldn't afford to go crazy. So I said, "Steve, you're going to Las Vegas." And he went to Las Vegas. We hired a contractor, till he got his license. He took his license, and we built 9 high-rises there. And he built Fontainebleau. He built the tower there, which is probably one of the biggest towers in America. So, he's accomplished a lot of stuff. You guys should be very proud of the stuff that he built. It was not easy stuff, and it was complicated stuff. There's a lot of guys that can build things that are simple, but Stevie built complicated stuff. He worked hard. He was diligent. He moved out there. You could count on him, and he was honest as could be. And I always knew that he had my back, and I had his back. And, you know, he was just an amazing guy. And this is, you know, obviously a tough year, as everyone said. But, you know, he was a wonderful, and he was in my office 10 days ago. I was like, came in, you know, and I remember him saying to me, you know, we were talking about something, you know, someone asked me, like, what did you build? And he had a list, he had his notes, like, what'd you build? And I'm not gonna mention the names, and he read off everything in this thing. He built Aventura Mall, he built Turnberry Isle, he built the country club, Turnberry Isle Country Club, he built our hotels in Nashville, he built all the condominiums, he built Porta Vida. Pretty much everything that we owned, he built. And my family was forever grateful for that. So I'm sorry, this is horrible, but your dad was a hell of a guy. He was awesome. And we'll miss him. Thank you.
In a few moments, we are going to conclude this ceremony with a memorial prayer called El Maleh Rachamim. The prayer El Maleh Rachamim is one of the moments in our lives in which our Hebrew names are used. And according to the sages, when our parents choose a Hebrew name for us, they are marking our path, our future. Giving our child a Hebrew name is an act of prophecy. I'm sure Stevie's parents knew that he was going to be a builder, and that's why they named him Shlomo, like King Solomon, the greatest builder of the Bible. And when we look at the story of King Solomon in the first book of Kings, we see that King Solomon built the temple before he built his palace. And I think that Stevie loved this place, this temple, this synagogue, even more than what he loved his own house. The last conversation that I had with him was right after the high holidays, when he learned from our synagogue's president that we are embarked in a massive renovation of our building. He called the synagogue and asked me so many details, because just like King Solomon in the first book of Kings, Stevie was very detail-oriented. He wanted to know about heights, about materials, about the timeline, about who was going to take care of the construction. Even though he was not our vice president of facilities anymore, he wanted to oversee everything that we did. I remember touring the newly constructed mikveh with him and him asking questions about pipes and draining. He knew every single detail of this building, and he loved this building as his own house. The last conversation that we had, I told him, Stevie, once we have blueprints, I'll make sure I sit with you and you can see every single detail. Even though we didn't have the chance to go over those details with him, I am sure that as we move into the next chapter of the history of this synod, Stevie will be from somewhere in heaven supervising the construction of our rededicated campus. We're going to raise as we offer the memorial prayer for Shlomo, for King Solomon, the great builder, Shlomo ben Moshe ber Bevel. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochem במרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת שלמה בן משה באר בבלה, שהלך לעולמו. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, אנא ועל הרחמים, אז תראו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, בינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Shlomo ben Moshe ber Bebela, our dear Stevie, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say amen. This concludes our service. The family will start sitting Shiva today at Porto Vita right after this funeral, and a graveside funeral will be held this coming Friday at 2 p.m. at Beth Shalom Cemetery in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As we have mentioned before, may we see each other next time in Simchas, in joyous occasion. May Stevie's memory be bound up in the bonds of life eternal, as we all say, amen.
Please remain in your places as the casket will be escorted outside from the sanctuary, from the Ida and Harry Sofer Sanctuary. Following this service, everyone is welcome at the Porta Vita Villa Grand Club. You should all know where it is, and the family will be gathering. And the best conversations you can have at this experience is to talk about Stevie. Your memories of him, your love for him, that's what's going to give us strength to get through these coming days. So please remain in your places. The family, we're all family, but the immediate family will first follow the casket. Tzedek lefanav yelech, v'yasem lederech pe'amav. Tzedek lefanav yelech, v'yasem lederech pe'amav. Tzedek lefanav yelech, v'yasem lederech pe'amav. יושב בסתר יום בצל שדי תלונן, אומר לאדוני מחסים בצורתי אלוהו תפתח בו, כי הוא יצילך מפח יכוש מדבר אבות, בעברתו יסח לך ותחת כנפיו תחסה צינה וסוחר עמיתו, לא תירא מפחד לילה מחץ יוף יומם, מדבר באופל יולך מכתב ישות צהריים, מפול מצילך 1000 ורבבה ממינך, אליך לא ייגש רק בעיניך תביט ושילומת רשעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני מחסי עליון שמת מבונך, לא תאונה אליך רעה ונגע לא יקרב בו אליך, כי מלאכיו יצווה לך לשמורך בכל דרכיך, על כפיים ישאונך פן תיגוף באבן רגליך, על שחר ופתן תדרוך תרמוס כפיר ותנין, כי בי חשק ואפלתהו עסק והוא כי ידע שמי, יקראני ועיניהו, עמו אנכי בצרה, אחצהו ואכבדהו, עורכם ממשביעהו וירא בשועתי, עורכם ממשביעהו וירא בשועתי.